I'm going to, perfect. So as we get started today, we are recording this session so that you and other students can reference back to this presentation and revisit it as you feel that you need. We will also, this session is going to be very, very interactive. I'm going to be asking questions of you to type into the chat. For the duration of today's presentation, we're going to keep you all muted. If you have questions, feel free to enter those into the chat. There will be opportunities for you to unmute yourself during the portions of interaction, because I do want this to be very interactive. And if you have, if you want to unmute yourself, that's fine, but we just want to try to keep this session and the recording of this session as clean as possible. So please, for the duration of today's presentation, try to keep yourself muted. And then I also want to just create space for, to honor the fact that I know that there's a lot of stuff going on in our homes, right? We're all having to work from home, study from home. And so if I happen to, if, you know, stuff's going on, please just make sure you're muted and handle what you got to handle. But please have grace also for me, because I'm dealing with 2 little young ones here at home also. So they may barge into this room and make a special guest appearance, okay? So thank you again for joining us. Again, my name is Genesis. I am the internship job developer here at Southwestern, and we're here today to really talk about internships. Internships are super important to your career. Vic is going to be monitoring. Victor is our student employment specialist. He works in our department. We are partners in crime. And so if you happen to have questions along the way, he's going to, you know, stop me and tell me to, you know, answer this question. So we're going to do our best to make sure that this session is as beneficial to you as you need it to be. Okay. All right. So with that said, let's move on. All right. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. We will be talking about what is an internship. We're going to talk about why are they important? How exactly do you do one here at Southwestern? How do you find one? And we're going to dive into, once you have one, how do you make sure that your internship experience is truly a successful one? Okay. And I'm give me a little bit of time right here. I'm just opening up your windows, guys, because I want to see more of your faces if I can. I know lots of you have your cameras off, and that's okay. But if you want to show your face, I kind of like to have some of that nonverbal stuff and seeing your eyes and your reactions to the things that we're talking about today. So awesome. All right, so we're going to start with the chat. I want you all, we're going to take a few moments here to, if you can just give me your name, your major, why you decided to attend today's session, and also how far along are you in your program. So for those questions are pretty easy to answer. So I'll let you guys type that in. I'll tell you a little bit about myself too. My name again is Genesis. Aside from being the internship job developer at Southwestern, I'm also, I also am a proud Jaguar. I went to Southwestern. I did my undergrad at San Diego State, and you know, that programs there are really impacted. So I did a lot of my classes actually at Southwestern at the same time. And so that I'm a proud product of Southwestern College. I got my master's degree in higher education administration. And I'm so happy and proud to have been working at Southwestern for the last 2 years and to serve the community in which I grew up in. And so I'm very, very happy to be here with you all and to help you all in this journey to make that transition between your education and your career and bridging that gap. All right, so I'm looking here at the chat. I see Andrea, she's studio arts. Ooh, these are coming in fast now. Want to do an internship transferring in the fall? Good. Medical assisting, building and coding. Want to learn about internships? Good. Good. Second semester. So some folks are early on. Want to know the do's and don'ts. So just switched major to psychology. Okay, Jeremy. Soledad, social work. Good. Congratulations. We have a lot of folks who are about to graduate. Congratulations. Good. Hands-on experience. Fantastic. Thank you all for sharing. I am keeping an eye on this. I see some pre-med biology folks, computer science, social work, psychology, film. This is good. Good. Keep them coming, guys. All right. So I'm going to dive right in. So what exactly is an internship? So an internship is a short-term work experience that's offered by a company, usually for students. Sometimes they're for, folks who are already done with school or just volunteers, but those opportunities are to help you gain experience, entry-level exposure into a particular industry or field. Okay, short-term work experience. That's really what an internship is. Some of the things that you'll be doing in an internship is that you're going to work on relevant projects and learn about the industry. You're going to make industry connections and develop both hard and soft skills. And the big piece of this that I think is really important, and it's not just about work experience, but it's also a learning opportunity as much as it is work. Okay. Some folks, and even some folks at Southwestern will like to tell you, like, this is a good place to internships are a great place to try on different things. But internships, while they are short term, they're usually like a semester long. And so if you're just like not sure about where you want to go with your career, or you don't know the various majors that you want to do yet, I don't recommend an internship. I think that's not, you're committing to a semester, right, to try something on. I would recommend instead maybe doing an informational interview or a job shadow to try something on for size. But if you're really looking to get experience in your field, then let's do an internship. Okay. Vic, can you just see if anybody needs to be muted? Thank you. All right. So why are internships important? Well, in the research that I've done over the last few years, the most recent data that we have in the NACE is the National Association of Colleges and Employers, and they do a study every year on internships. And according to their recent study, 68% of interns were offered full-time roles at their internship site. Think about that. That's 70%, almost 70% of folks who do an internship are offered a full-time job. That's pretty impressive. And then beyond that, in some research done by Monster recently, 85% of companies are actually using internships as a way to recruit. So 85% of employers are saying, yeah, we use our internship program to bring in full-time people. So the pairing of these two data points really explains to us as students and as educators that the value of internships isn't just about getting experience, but it's that entry level into a full-time role. And so I'm so happy to see that so many of you are so close to graduation, because this is a perfect time to get that experience and then flip the switch once you've graduated, right, into a more full-time opportunity. All right, so what are the benefits of doing an internship? One thing I do want to point out is that it's an opportunity to apply the theoretical knowledge that you're gaining in the classroom into a real life work setting. And then to develop what we call business acumen, business professionalism. How do you carry yourself in a workplace? The reality is, and I can say this from experience, is the transition from being a student into my first full-time job is a big difference, right? And so these internships are a great way to understand, what is it really like to work in a workplace And what are the expectations? And they understand that you as a student don't know all those things yet. And this is the perfect way to learn all of those things. Give me just a second, I need some water. The other thing, when we talk about applying theoretical knowledge, is I typically tell students you want at least 2 to 3 of your core classes in your major under your belt, right? Employers are there to teach you. This is a learning experience in doing an internship, but they don't want to teach you everything. They want you to know a little bit and be able to really make an impact while you're there. That's how that 68% of interns are being able to turn into full-time jobs. It's because they have some knowledge under their belt. If you're walking in and it's your first semester and you're trying to do an internship, it might not be the best fit, because we want you to absolutely be able to make an impact and share what you bring to the table with the employers. Expand your experience and learn new skills. I think that's obvious. I don't have to really dive into that one too much. Learn about yourself and develop confidence. Now, I'm going to tell you from personal experience. Okay, my undergraduate degree was in psychology. My bachelor's degree was in psychology. And I went to school thinking I wanted to be a school psychologist. My internship at my undergrad level was at an elementary school. And I was volunteering with the school psychologist. And I never met with her. I think twice during the whole semester, because I learned that school psychologists aren't in one school site, nor are they really truly able to make an impact with students, because they don't get to know them. They're just bouncing around from school to school, right? So that opportunity told me, nope, that's not the role for me, right? That's not the role for me. And then in my master's program, I even did an internship with a marriage family therapist, really understanding what is it like to do therapy. Again, thinking psychology major, I want to do that. And then I realized I'm not cut out to hear people complain all day and process their problems. I have too much empathy. I carry that stuff with me. So I learned in that internship experience, nope, that's not for me either. And so I think the value of internships are, again, yes, being able to try things on for size, but within the field that you know that you want to get into, right? I decided counseling and career coaching wasn't going to be important to me, or was my way to do it, because I was helping people, but really talking about more positive things and helping them in achieving their goals. And I was only able to find that because I tried a bunch of stuff on for size that I didn't like. Okay. And through all of that, I was able to develop a confidence in myself to know, okay, those aren't the things for me, but these are the things for me. And these are the things that I bring to the table. I'm a great presenter. I am someone who really connects with people, that I can help uplift other folks. Those are skills that I was able to gain, but also a confidence in myself that I can do this. And so that's one of the real big benefits of an internship, is developing your confidence and being able to really succeed in this field. I'm going to talk about adding value to your resume. So absolutely, if you've got no work experience under your belt, or work that's only, maybe you've only worked retail or food service in your past, and you want to add some stuff that's more relevant to your major, then an internship is a great way to do that, to add some value to your resume through your skills and your experiences. I would also say the two biggest ones I would say are developing your professional network. Your supervisor, your colleagues at your internship site, those are going to be people who can be your references, right? People who are going to be able to speak to what you bring to the table. And so an internship is a great place to build those networks, build people who will be able to serve as your references in the future, or even tell you about future job openings at that company, or introduce you to other people that they know. So the networking piece is crucial. And then again, because of the information I shared in the last slide, the possible conversion into a job is high in an internship. So definitely those are the true benefits of doing an internship. And so I'm really glad that you all are here, interested in wanting to know more about our internships and the opportunities ahead of you. Okay, so what kind of internships are there? So I really break these up into two categories: paid internships and unpaid internships. It seems pretty self-explanatory, right? But I'm going to provide some insight about what this really means. In terms of a paid internship, the company will pay, or the employer will pay you either an hourly wage or a stipend, like a monthly stipend. A stipend is just like a lump sum for working and learning at their company. There are fewer paid opportunities available, and typically they fall with organizations that are more well-known and more established, and therefore they're fewer, right? And they're with more prestigious companies, and what that really means is that they are more competitive. So organizations like Nike, for their summer internship program, they recruit in November of the previous year. Okay. Organizations like Disney, Google, organizations like that, they recruit at least a semester, if not two, in advance. Okay. So what that means, if you're looking for a paid internship, and with one of the more prestigious organizations, you're going to want to tackle those. That requires planning. And you're going to want to tackle that early. Okay. So just know that. And then, oh yeah, I put often recruit semester a year in advance. Perfect. The other option is an unpaid internship. Okay. In an unpaid internship, an employer does not pay a wage or a stipend. And there's a little asterisk there because we're going to talk a little bit more about that. There are more opportunities available than the paid opportunities, but they do follow more of a stringent labor guideline. And I'm actually going to pop this link in the chat here. Let me do that. I wonder if it'll let me do that. Oops, sorry. Okay, I will do that later on today, but and that's because of the US Department of Labor. Early in my career as a career coach advisor for students, there was a time where unpaid companies were laying off their paid workers so that they could take advantage of unpaid workers, unpaid interns to do that job. And so the federal government was like, you cannot do that. Internships are meant to be learning experiences for students. And so there is a test, like a 5-question test that companies have to run their experience through to make sure that they're doing things the right way. And that's what that link is. I'll make sure to send that to you. But particularly in the state of California, we have a law that says students doing unpaid internships must receive college credit. So if you're not being paid, okay, it is against the law for you to just volunteer for a company. That's against the law. If it's a nonprofit organization like Father Joe's Village, you can volunteer. Absolutely, you can volunteer. But if it's a company who makes a profit, right, they have to do their internships for course credit. Okay. So that's something for you to know. The other piece of it is that there's a possibility that even though the company might not pay you and you get academic course credit, there is a possibility for a Southwestern College internship stipend. So the college does issue a $750 stipend for students in particular majors, which we call career education or CTE majors, who are doing unpaid internships to get $750 to offset the cost of travel and lost wages, things like that. So there is an opportunity to make some money there if you are a CE major. Okay. So that's the big difference between paid and unpaid. And it's important that you know that as a student so that you're not being taken advantage of. Because everybody likes free labor, right? Except the people who are actually doing the free labor. So how do internships work exactly here at Southwestern? So here at Southwestern, again, you have to do the internship for academic credit, for course credit. You must be enrolled in what we call a cooperative work experience education course. Cooperative work experience education course. We call them CWE courses for short. And that's like a business 290 for our like finance majors. Anybody whose major is in business, it's business 290. If you're computer science or CIS major, you have a CIS 290. There's so it really depends on your major in terms of what class it is. If you're in art, it's art 290. If you're in automotive, it's automotive 290. So that's the class that you would have to take in order to be able to get the course credit. And the internship will, and we can talk through that. There's also a PD 290. So if you're not like in a what we call a career education major, so something like psychology, like myself, right, a psychology major, you would enroll in a PD 290, and that's for all majors. Okay, PD 290. And in those classes, you have to do, most of those classes are for a minimum of 2 units, you would have to do 120 hours of internship over the course of the semester. Now, I know that sounds kind of crazy, right? 120 hours, how much time is that? Well, you have 15 weeks in a semester, roughly. So that's about 8 hours a week if you had one internship from day one. So it's not too much time. But that changes in the summer, okay? I know summer session's coming up here shortly. Summer session is only 8 weeks long, okay? So 8 weeks in 120 hours in 8 weeks is 15 hours a week, okay? So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about when can I possibly fit this class into my schedule and my SCP. Now, I will say this in terms of the class. The class is just the means for you to receive the academic credit. There's not a ton of paperwork. There are no papers. Let me say that. There's no papers. There's no tests involved in these classes. You have an internship instructor / facilitator who really serves as your school point of contact, okay? You'll just go to your internship, do the 120-hour minimum for the class, okay? And you will have a timesheet that you have to fill out and some learning objectives that you and your supervisor will come up with. And you'll turn that in at the beginning and at the end of the semester in order for you to receive the grade. Does that make sense? You're not reading, you don't have Canvas reading or discussions that you have to complete in Canvas. It's just go to your internship, do what you got to do, and complete your learning objectives, and those will be counted. Once you turn those in, that will count for your grade. Make sense? All right. I'm going to go into the next one here. All right, I want to take a moment here and pause and allow you to kind of dream a little bit, okay? This helps me too as your internship job developer to help to see where you guys want to intern. Are there companies you want to intern with? Are there experiences you want to gain in your internship? I'm looking for a graphic design internship where I work with an advertising company, right? Talk it through a little bit. Go ahead and do that in the chat for me. Share with me, what is it that you think that you want to do? And if you don't know, that's okay. You can say, I'm not sure right now, but I'd love to hear from you. Kind of describe for me what your ideal internship looks like. Victor and my job, half of the time is spent really working with you guys and making sure that you feel prepared to tackle the world of work. But that's also for Victor and I to go out and make these connections with employers. And so when you're able to share with us a little bit of insight in terms of what you're looking for, we can do a better job of finding those opportunities for you. So I'm going to pause here, take a sip of water, and let you all share here in the chat. What is it that you are interested in? Awesome. I see Noemi. Good. Internship with kids in the foster homeless or in a homeless place. It's interesting. Yeah, we have a lot of nonprofit orgs that we focus in on who do that. So that's good. Production company where you learn about aspects of a show or movie. Learn about screenwriting. Good, Trinity. Clinic because my major is medical assistant. Company who works with GIS. GIS is everything, Gina. So that's interesting. Yeah, definitely. I see clinics or hospitals with research labs. Good. We partner with SDSU Research Foundation, and they have a lot of organizations that you'd be interested in partnering with. Small CPA firm. Okay. Good. I want to pause here and talk a little bit about, I see some of the clinical stuff coming in. For majors like MedOp, medical assisting, and even ADN, even dental hygiene, you all have what we call externships. And those are clinical work experiences that are already embedded into your program. I know in nursing, we have ADN 290. We also have practicums and clinical experiences that are already baked into your programs. And those are great for you. For you all, you are also able to do an additional opportunity through PD 290. But the beauty of the more clinical programs, the health professions, is that your faculty have already created those relationships with those organizations for your externship sites so that you can do those opportunities within your program. So that is what I'll say about that. I see bookkeeping internships, engineering internships. Good. There's a lot of those posted right now in Handshake. We'll talk about that today too. Animation, storyboards, illustrations. As long as you're creating art, you're happy. That's great, Angel. I love it. I love it. This is all very, very insightful and really helpful to Victor and myself as we continue to build these relationships and to share with you, what opportunities make the most sense for you. All right. So I'm going to dive right in. Where do I find an internship? We're going to dive into some of these things. Handshake. I'm going to go through a little bit of a demo today, sharing with you Handshake. Handshake is our career development and job board platform that we have for our students here at Southwestern. So that's the perfect place to look because the job board is focused on what we call early recruitment, really employers who are looking for students and new professionals to join their organizations. So definitely check that out. I would also, of course, recommend that you meet with me. I'm the internship job developer. Again, I'm here to support you with your search. And the more that I actually get to know you and get to know what your goals are, the easier it is for me to like let you know, right, when something comes up that I think you might be interested in. So I'll walk you through how to set up an appointment with me also today. And then there are several job boards that are really, really interesting, particularly for internships. I know this first one sounds really like self-explanatory, but a lot of folks don't know about it. It's internships.com, and it's actually run by Chegg, and most of you are probably familiar with Chegg as the textbook rental company, and they also run this internships.com website. So that's that. Indeed.com, again, good for jobs, also good for internships. ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile yet, I definitely recommend creating one. It is a professional network, so it's like our social media, but only for professional purposes. And they have a job board component and an internship, and they post internships on that. Companies that you guys expressed interest in, like if you're interested, Soledad mentioned she's interested in working for the county, so they'll have internships posted on their job board, their company website. So I would definitely think about like what organizations are really interesting to you, and follow them and their company websites. And then don't be afraid to put yourself out there and share what it is you're looking for with your faculty, your family, and your friends, because you don't know who exists in their network of folks. You know, you have your friends, and oftentimes what we tend to do is we really insulate our personal and our professional lives, and our friends and our family often are like our biggest advocates, people who love us and care for us and want to see us be successful. And we could be tapping into their market of folks that they know, their network of people who they could be connecting us to. I'll give you a really good example. One of my students, she was going into audio production, or she's a recording arts and technology student, and she really wanted to work at a recording studio. And she was really, really interested in, and I go, you know, I've got this one organization I think you'd be interested in. And she was really nervous about her interview. We prepared her for it. She showed up for her interview. We prepared for her interview. We did some practice interview. She walks into the interview, and one of the people that she meets with is her mom's best friend. Her mom's best friend. And she was so, obviously she got the opportunity, right? But because if she had just maybe shared a little bit about what she's studying and what she's looking to do with even her mom, we could have, that opportunity that unfolded naturally anyway, but it could have been an easier road for her to get there. Does that make sense? So I'm gonna pause here and jump into Handshake to show you all what I'm talking about. All right. So in your student portal, so I'm going to myswccd.edu. I am waiting for it to pop up. So under campus apps, you should have a button that just came out this year. It's called Handshake. Handshake, most of you RSVP'd for this session through Handshake, so you probably know already what I'm talking about. But Handshake is amazing, and I'm actually on my admin side, so I'm going to switch over to my student side. So it'll look more like what you guys see. So this is what it looks like when you log in, okay? You may have a few questions if you've never logged in before. You may have a few questions that you have to answer depending on where you want to look. Are you looking for full-time or part-time work? What industries are you looking in? And that's really meant to just help you in terms of personalizing your experience within Handshake. But here under jobs, you can easily search for opportunities. And my settings are set to internship because I'm the internship job developer. But you could easily just search internship. And we can say, I know I had some finance folks in the room. We have some finance internships. I want to point out, like this one here, finance intern reserved for students with disabilities. Okay, you can see that it's located in Chicago, but they're open to remote. Okay, so that's work that you can do from home. You don't have to go into the office. Okay, so there's another one in Madison, Wisconsin, and it says remote. Okay, so just pay attention to that. Also read through the job description. Sometimes it says that the opportunity is there in remote. Okay, so there are lots and lots of opportunities. I'm going to remove finance, but you can see there are currently 317 internships posted within Handshake. The other thing I like to share with students while in utilizing Handshake is if there are employers that you want to work for, start following them so that when they post opportunities, you'll know when they come up. So I started following Disney maybe 2 weeks ago, and they just posted some internships. So that's something for you to and I got a notification about that. So you definitely want to do that. Okay. I'll also note, if you don't know already, Handshake is an app on your smartphone. So you can just download the app also and take it on the road with you. And as you're, not while you're driving, but say you're in the passenger seat of a car, you can bookmark your internships that you're interested in to apply later. Okay. The last thing that I want to point out here, remember I told you one of the ways that you want to start looking for an internship is to meet with me. So here from the homepage here, you can hit Career Center, and that takes you to our homepage, and you can hit this button that says Schedule Appointment. Okay, and if you're interested in internship search, you click that internship search button, and my availability pops up here. So you can preference me, and you can search, okay, what day and time work best for you, and you can schedule that appointment with me. Very, very easy. I promise you, we're probably the easiest group on campus that you can schedule an appointment with. So do that. Okay, so that's how you schedule an appointment with me. And again, these are the links to these are the other internship sites that I recommend that you utilize. Handshake, again, above and beyond anything, use Handshake. There are also industry-specific job boards. So when we meet, we can talk a little bit about those industry-specific job boards that you might want to take a look at. And then again, these websites are all very, very, very good. All right.
Real quick, just as we had one question.
Sure.
Andrea asked, are all of the internships presented remote, even if they say the headquarters are in another state?
No, not always. And I'll give you an example. Sometimes our students, I'll give you a really good example. I just met with a student the other day who is a paralegal student, and she recently moved to Imperial Valley. So that's way beyond that's out east. So we have to have opportunity. And then they have another student who just moved to Atlanta because we're in remote operations, right? And so she's finishing out her program in Atlanta. And so we do try to have other positions located in other areas for other students. And also I want you to keep in mind that Handshake isn't just for Southwest. We have it here at Southwestern, but there are a network of 800 schools and colleges across the country. And so there are companies who are saying like, okay, I want to post this job to all of the schools within the Handshake network. So you'll see positions for other locations also. Okay, but so read through the description carefully to see what they say about remote. Okay.
I have another quick question if possible.
Yeah, sure. Jump in, Adrian.
Yeah, how often do you know that they like update the internships available?
Yeah, great question. So Victor and I spend a good amount of our day approving internships and jobs daily.
Yeah. Hourly. Between the hours of 8 and 5 p.m.
Yeah, and so I would say, you know, make it a habit to check your internships, check the job board at least a couple times a week to see what popped up. Okay, because I think Victor was so kind enough that during spring break he was still approving jobs. I think he said he got through like 700 jobs and internships last week, and even today, I know when I logged on this morning there are like 170 positions that Victor and I had to sift through today to go through. And so
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
no problem. I'm gonna Yan, I see your question too. I'm gonna hold off on your question. We do have one, like just a couple more slides, and then I can dive in and take all the other questions. Sound good? Okay. So 10 tips for a successful internship experience. Once you get an internship, okay, once you've nailed down your internship, I want you to be part of that 68% who gets offered a full-time job. That's my dream, for every student to have a positive experience in their internship and have that turn into a job opportunity for them. And so with that, requires you to really do a good job at your internship site. And so I always recommend students to put their best foot forward and remember that these folks are the beginning of your career. It might be that you don't even like your internship site, but these are folks who are going to be your network. They're going to be the people who are your references, at least at the very beginning of your career. So do a good job so that they have positive things to say about you for your next role. Okay, so here are my 10 tips. First is to set goals with your supervisor and request feedback. Okay. Some bosses are really good about giving you feedback on your performance. Other bosses are not so good. So you don't know if you're doing a good job, if they're happy with you, if they're not so happy with you. And so it's good for you to meet with your boss early on in your internship and say, okay, these are my goals for my internship. If you're in one of those cooperative, the CWE courses, one of your tasks are to create some learning objectives, some goals for yourself. And so you'll sit down with your boss and decide what those are. You'll have learning objectives, they'll have objectives for you to accomplish while you're in the internship site. Okay, and so being very clear about what those goals are for yourself and for your supervisor. And then on a regular cadence, it doesn't have to be weekly or daily. It can be every 6 weeks, every 8 weeks, every 2 months for them to say, okay, how am I performing? What are things that I can improve on? And those are opportunities for you to continue to grow as a professional and get some really poignant feedback on how you're performing. Okay, it shows your employer also that you care. You care about how you're presenting yourself. You care about doing a good job. Okay. Do your research on the organization. That one is pretty self-explanatory. You're going to want to do it anyway in your interview, right? But the more that you know about the organization, the better you are going to be at being successful. Mainly because you're going to know, what is the organization's mission and vision and goals, and how are you going to be able to contribute to them, and why is your work that you're doing as an intern important to the organization. Okay, get to know your coworkers. This is gonna, and that I don't want that to sound like this is a social gathering, right? But I do think it's important for you to get to know your coworkers and invest in them also. Get to know them, you see a picture of their daughter on their desk, say, oh, how old is she? How, and have them open up. Yes, exactly, Adrian, for networking purposes, because you don't know who they know. But they also want to know that you care about them and you care about the work and you're investing into the place, right? It's also about understanding what they do too. So for example, you might have an internship in marketing, right? And you might see you have to work with some graphic designers, right? And they might give you some insight in terms of how the whole operation works together. And that's insight that's going to be valuable to your own professional development, your own skill set, your own strategic efforts in terms of how you work out your career, maybe a new skill set you want to learn. And so getting to know your coworkers, how you all work together, and how you can support each other is only going to make you a strong team member. Okay. Be mindful of how you present yourself. Be professional. I cannot tell you, Victor's nodding his head too. This is so important. And I know it's hard to know exactly how to, but watch your coworkers. Watch your coworkers, watch your team, watch your boss. How are they carrying themselves? Because this is the beginning of your career. This is your opportunity to watch everyone around you and say, okay, they don't have their phones out right now. I should not have my phone out. Okay. Everybody's dressed business casual. I should be dressed a little bit better than how I'm coming in, you know? So these are all things that you need to be mindful of. Being professional means showing up on time. It means being courteous to everyone. It means being busy. So just know that everyone's watching you, and not to scare you, right? But just to be aware that people are aware of how you present yourself, and that's how you show up is really, really, really important. Okay.
Yeah, just to quickly add to that also, make sure that because you're an intern, you want to do a really great impression. So make sure you're a little bit above what the regular coworkers are doing too. So if you see your coworkers, they're on their phones and they're doing certain things, make sure you're still not doing that. They have the job, they're secured, but you're still an intern. So you want to do that. I remember learning that from my first internship. I couldn't do what everybody else was doing. I was already hired in their position. So definitely make sure that you're a step above.
Mhm. Watch and learn. Be a sponge. Soak it all in. Soak it all in. That's probably one of the biggest ones I have is to just watch and learn and really be aware of what's going on around you. That's the best way to learn, is to be in the environment and to see how and why and what people are doing. With that, as you're watching and learning, ask questions. Ask questions. You know, one of my best friends, she just recently started a new job, and in her 3-month review, her boss told her, "It doesn't seem like you want to be here." And she said, "What? I love it here." And she goes, "Well, the reason it doesn't seem like you want to be here is because you're not asking any questions. Of course, we don't expect you to know everything. And so when you don't ask questions, it doesn't tell us you're excited about the work or that you want to know more." And so my biggest piece of feedback here, watch and learn, ask questions, okay? And then my other piece is really keep busy and be enthusiastic. You're there to help. You're there to help make their jobs easier. You're there to contribute. You're there to learn. And so if you don't have enough work, ask someone if you can help them. If you're not doing anything, it looks like you're just taking up space, and they want you there to make an impact. And the way you're going to make an impact is by being enthusiastic about being there, asking questions, and keeping busy. Hey, what are you working on? Is there anything that I can help you with? You know, tell your boss, I just finished this project. Is there anybody that I can help? Any projects that you need assistance with? That helps them be able to utilize you and all of your abilities. Okay. Stay organized and manage your time wisely. Organization is always important. You guys know that. We here at the college, I think we really harp on that with you. It's like, you need to stay organized and you need to manage your time wisely. But I think even if you're having a hard time meeting deadlines, don't not say anything. That's 100% okay to say, boss, I've got a lot going on. I'm working on this, and this. I don't think I'm going to make your Friday deadline to complete this project. Do you have any suggestions on what I can do differently? Can I reprioritize and put this at the top and maybe not work on those other things? That shows initiative. That shows that you're being very aware of your time, that you are managing yourself effectively. Okay, so just I can't express that enough, is that being able to tell your boss, like, okay, I'm not going to make this deadline. You know, it's okay. That happens all the time in work. If the deadlines don't get missed, but it's important that you communicate about them rather than just let the deadline pass. Okay. Keep track of your projects. This is a big one. Okay. Keep track of your projects. Your projects are opportunities, activities, accomplishments that you can put on your resume. Okay, keep track of those because no one else is doing it for you. Okay, you're going to want to document your success, document the things that you've done, the new skills that you've learned, the accomplishments that you've had, the new experiences that you've had. Keep track of those. Keep track of your projects. You know, maybe you'll add them to a portfolio, but you definitely add them to your resume. Okay. And then lastly, reflect on your experience as you're going through this process. You know, have someone, whether it's a mentor, whether it's myself or Victor or a faculty member or a friend, really talk about your experience. What are you liking about your internship? What are you not liking about your internship? There are always ways to fine tune and to craft your experience to be what you want. Even if it's your boss, I wish I was doing more of this. Okay, then I can help you in having a conversation of how to approach that a little bit with your boss to see if there's opportunities for you to do some stretch activities that are more aligned with the things that you want to be doing. Okay. All right. So with that, I want to hear from you. What are your next steps? What's one thing in the chat? Feel free to type that in. What are your next steps? What are you going to be working on next? Are you working on your resume? Are you booking an appointment with me? Are you, or what's one thing that you learned? What did you get out of today's discussion? And how can I be of help? So go ahead and type that into the chat. I'll give you all a few moments to do that.
And also, since we're coming to a close, if your name is not your legal name or it's name with the school, if you can drop your correct names in the chat, that would help so much. Thank you.
Good, Camilo. Developing a LinkedIn profile. We have a webinar on that too that you can access on our YouTube channel. If you look at Southwestern College Student Employment Services or SWC Student Employment Services, we have a whole video on that that you can reference. Good. Oh, I love that, Adrian. Since it's your first year, you haven't taken classes related to your major, start doing the research now on the companies. Yeah, on companies you want to intern for. I would even look at their internship postings and look at their job descriptions and say, okay, these are the skills that they're going to be looking for. These are the things that they want me to have experience in before I get into an internship. So I'm going to start working on those now before it's time for me to apply. Good. Research internships, searching internships on Handshake. Good, Angela. Update your resume. Good, Aisha. Handshake Profile. We'll talk about that, Yan. Good. Good. Resume. Good. Portfolio and resume. Very good. Good. Awesome. Thank you guys for sharing. I'm going to open it up to questions. I know there was a few that popped in here. Vic, can we go back a little bit? Oh, you know what? Yan had a question about her profile. And I can pull that up right here. Give me just a second. So in Handshake, okay, everybody, are you thumbs up if you can see the Handshake right now? Awesome, thank you. So in Handshake, in your upper right-hand corner, thanks, David, there is my profile, okay? Here on my profile is your Handshake profile, okay? It's really easy here. You can see mine is at 85%, and it tells you what you need to add here to get to 100%. And your profile is complete when you're sharing your education, what classes, down here it says what courses you've taken, what extracurricular activities you're a part of, your work experience, your interests, your, down here, your skills, right? So this is all, you're able to do this. Even if you have your resume ready to go, you can even upload your resume and it'll help populate your Handshake profile. And then at the end of the day, if you're at a point with your Handshake profile, you're like, Genesis, Victor, can you help me? We can look at your Handshake profile with you and help you in making sure that your profile is reflective of all that you bring to the table. Okay. And I'm gonna go back here. All right, Vic, what's our next question?
Oh, perfect. It just popped in. Can you show how to book an appointment with you one more time?
Oh yeah, perfect. All right, let me just stop sharing the PowerPoint. So I'm gonna go back. So from the homepage, I always go back to the homepage because it's the easiest place to navigate from. So here from the homepage, you're just gonna click on Career Center. And under Career Center, there's a button here on the left that says Schedule Appointment. When you hit Schedule Appointment, you're going to select a reason. You know what I mean? Okay, maybe it's I want help with my resume. But for in most of your case, it's going to be internship search, sometimes career coaching or career development. And then you'll just pick a time slot that works best for you. You can update which staff member you want to meet with. If you're looking for internships, it's likely me. So, and you can see my availability. Okay. I still have availability this week and next week. So there's some space here for you. All right. Thanks, Jane. Links to where to find internship and people who would help. Okay, good. Good. Andrea, I don't know if that was a question or if that's your next steps. So if it's your next steps, and what we'll do, we're going to send the recording out to everyone, as well as the copy of the slides. Okay. So you'll have all of those links. Trying to think, see if there's any other questions.
And for those, thank you that did try and register. We're sorry, we had it closed at 3, but I just opened it up so you can re-register and check in. I'm going to drop the link where you can register for the event again.
Any other questions? Feel free to unmute yourselves too. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see all your faces and see all your little squares. I did see health majors that have externships. Jane, you had that question. So if health profession majors have externships already embedded into their courses, there's no need for an additional internship. There isn't. There is no need. But if you want more experience, you're welcome to it. All right, any other questions? Again, feel free to, you can also unmute yourselves and ask your question live. I hope that today was helpful for all of you. Awesome. All right, well, with that, if you don't have any questions, thank you so much for being here. I look forward to meeting with all of you and being here to support you in your internship search and being along for your career journey. If you need anything, you know where to find me. In Handshake, very easy to find. You can also email us. I'll put my contact information back up on the screen, so if you need to, you can write that down. Give me just a sec. Awesome. Have a good one, everyone. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It helped so much.
No problem. Take care, Angela.
Thank you.
Bye, Ann.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Hey, David. Oh, he just hung up. Okay. He had a question. Okay.
Oh, let me stop recording.